Welcome everyone to part 15. So we saw in the past two lessons all about the spiritual world, the reality in four dimension. Now we're going to see a kind of flashback, what happened in the past, to better understand the reality of now and also what is coming. So let's look in Genesis 6 verse 1 to 4. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives, of all which they chose. And the Lord says, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh. Yet his day shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. So we see a really interesting passage here, when we have a lot of character. So first we have the sons of God, which is translated like Bar Elohim. So Bar, it's a Hebrew word for son, and Elohim for God. So we have also another characters here, the daughters of men. We have what they call giant in verse 4, which is the word Nephilim, which mean those who fell. And there's also the mighty men. So it's translated Giborim, which mean mighty. We'll come back about the mighty in the next lesson or so. So before and after the flood. Why after? Because they were after as well. We see that in number 13:33 to 34. When they send the people of Israel, they send spies into the promised land, and we saw giants, Anakim over there, the sons of Anak. We see that in 1 Chronicle 26 as well, about Goliath and all his cousin as well. There's one who have like 6 fingers. In Deuteronomy chapter 2 as well, they describe all these nations like the Imim, the Rephaim, the Anakim, the Zamzumim. So all these Mim, they are actually cousins or distant cousin of those giants that were there before the flood. So the most common interpretation or conservative traditional interpretation is that the sons of God are actually the son of Seth, which was the third son of Adam and Eve, where Noah came from. And the daughters of men were the sons of Cain, because Cain disobeyed God, and finally all his descendants were called the daughters of men. Why they say that? Because they say it couldn't be angels, the sons of God, because angels cannot reproduce, and that's their argument. But why did God oppose or did not approve the daughters of men, so the daughters of Cain, to marry the sons of Seth? Because God command like multiply and fill the earth. So why will God be against that? So we have to understand, who are the sons of God? Are they really a descendant of Seth, or there's something else? So again, when we don't understand a verse, we have to use another passage from the Bible to shed light on that verse. Otherwise it's just speculation. So let's look at all the verse that talk about the sons of God, Bar Elohim. So we're going to see that in Job chapter 1 verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came along also among them. So you see, they came with Satan to present themselves in front of God. We see the same in chapter 2 verse 1. And again there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. So you see, this is going on in the spiritual world. But again, there's a lot of interpretation. Like I said, they say no, angels cannot reproduce. So they try to explain these verses saying, oh, the Lord descend during those days, during the sacrifice day. So the sons of men, so the sons of Seth, can come and stand before the Lord in the earth or on the earth. So that way they try to move around these verses, try to explain their theory. But if you look at another verse in Job 38, 4 to 7, the context is the Lord is speaking to Job. And he's talking about the foundation of the earth, so the creation and everything. And he says, Where wast thou when I laid the foundation of the earth? You see, it's about Genesis chapter 1. Declare if thou hast understanding. Who had laid the measure thereof, if you know it? Or who had stretched the line upon it? Whereupon are the foundation thereof fastened? Or who laid the cornerstone thereof? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. So you see the context here. God is describing the creation, and he says, like, were you there? You know, when I created that, when I laid a foundation of the earth and the cornerstone, and you see, when the morning stars sang together. So God made the stars the fourth day, and the sons of God were already there. So men were created the sixth day. And Seth were born way after Adam and Eve fell. So you see that the sons of God couldn't be the descendant of Seth because they were already there when the stars were made. So you see that verse really point toward angels or spiritual beings. So the sons of God were really spiritual being, four-dimension being. So can an angel sin? You know, can an angel fall? If you look at Job 4:18, it says, "Behold, he put no trust in his servant, and his angels he charged with fully." So you see, even angels are not pure in God's eyes. And if you look at the verse that is problematic to explain the theory that the sons of God were angels who went after the daughters of men and made children. If we look at Mark chapter 12, so the story is Jesus answered a question of someone who says, like, oh, if a man marry a woman but he dies and his 7 brothers each turn marry the same woman and die one after another, when will arrive in heaven? So who's going to be the husband of that wife, of that woman? So Jesus answered in verse 25, "For when they shall rise from the dead, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels which are in heaven." So you see, angels cannot reproduce. Jesus said it. No, it's not what Jesus said. Jesus says they won't get married. They will be as the angels which are where? In heaven. So that's the key word here. They didn't say that the angels cannot reproduce. They just say they will be like angels in heaven. So in heaven, that's the fourth dimension. That's the spiritual world. So when an angel is on the earth, my question is, does an angel sleep? Does an angel eat? Does an angel drink? When he is on the earth. Let's look in Genesis chapter 19. So it's the story of Sodom and Gomorrah when God sent 2 angels to destroy it. And let's read the first 5 verses. "And there came 2 angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. And Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them." So you see, you have 2 angels. "And he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he says, Behold, now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and ye shall rise up early, and to go on your way." Rise up early, so they sleep. "And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the street all night. And he pressed upon them greatly, and they turned in unto him, and he entered into his house, and he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat." So we see angels do eat. "But before they lay down," so they lay down, "the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lot, and says unto him, Where are the men which came in to thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them." So you see, that we may know them is the same wording when Adam knew his wife. So they were talking about sleeping with them. So you see, angels could have sex as well. They can eat, they sleep, because they are in human form when they are on the earth. If you look, angels look exactly like men. They behave like men when they are on the earth. The proof is Hebrew chapter 13, verse 2. It says, "Be not forgetful to entertain stranger, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares." So you see, we can entertain angels and not realizing it. So angels can behave like men when they are on the earth, but they actually have like other powers because they don't have the same limitation. If we go back to Genesis 19, verse 11, "And they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they weird themselves to find the door. So you see that the angels have extra powers that the human doesn't have. They just like everybody got blind because of these two angels. So let's look at the key verse in Jude that will explain why all this is possible, why in Genesis chapter 6 it could be angels, the sons of God. If you look at verse 6 and 7, "And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chain under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them, in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication, and going after strange flesh, and set forth for an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire." So you see, they compare these angels who left their first estate to Sodom and Gomorrah, who went after strange flesh. He wanted to sleep with the angels at the time, like we read in Genesis chapter 19. So you see the word here, estate, but they left their own habitation. See, habitation, the word in Greek, it's extra-terrestrial. I'm not sure if I pronounce it right, but the word is only used 2 times in the whole Bible. So the second time, it's in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 2. So it says, talk about us. "For in this we groan, earnestly desiring to be clothed upon with our house, which is from heaven." You see, house, the habitation. See, this talk about the glorified body. So it's the same word that is used for a glorified body. So in Jude, they say that the angels didn't keep their glorified body, but they went unto the earth, and they went to strange flesh. So they abandoned their first estate. So they became as human, so they can reproduce. And so what happened in Genesis chapter 6? The angels came, took human form, and took wives among the daughters of men, and they produced a kind of race of giant, which are a powerful hybrid. What is an hybrid? A hybrid is like half human, half angels. And because they were more powerful, more mighty than a normal human, what happened if they dominate over people? They rule over normal human being. Why? Because they were more powerful. And we see that in Psalm 82. Psalm 82 talk about these hybrid, these giant, or these mighty men, these Giborim or Nephilim. So look at Psalm 82. "God standeth in the congregation of the mighty." You see the mighty, the same word used in Genesis chapter 6 for the Giborim, so the mighty men. So they were like spiritual being, or half human, half spiritual being. "He judge among the gods." You see, little g, gods, the sons of God we saw. "How long will ye judge unjustly, and accept the person of the wicked? Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Rid them out of the hand of the wicked. They know not, neither will they understand. They walk in the darkness. All the foundation of the earth are out of course. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High." You see, he's talking to the sons of God right now, that they rule with wickedness, because they were rulers, they were mighty, they were powerful. And God says, why do you rule with wickedness, when you should rule with righteousness? It's like, "But ye shall die like men, and fall like one of the princes. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations." So you see, he's talking to them. He's like, ye are gods, and you're all children of the Most High, but you will die like men. So you see, he's talking to these sons of God, or these giants. So the produce of an angels and daughters of men, they produce a kind of hybrid race, that they were really powerful, but they will die like men. So you see, they're not eternal, because their spirit is from an angel, but their body is from earth. So when they died, they will die like men, even if they're gods with little g. And because they were rulers in the ancient days, they see themselves as gods. So usually they build like their own tombstone, or their own monument, or sanctuary, or temple. So all the idolatry come from these rulers, and often they are buried in their own temple. So like we see in Peru, we discover a lot of mummies, of these Nephilim, or these hybrid. So you see some example here, the large skull. There's even with some hair, and they analyzed the DNA and they found out they are not human. So these are not human skull. They are hybrid. So these are the Nephilim. These are the mighty men, the giant. That's from Genesis chapter 6. So they were buried in their temple. And you see, that's curious, because there's a lot of, in the tradition of many culture, when there's a child, they put some plate in their forehead and around their head, so the skull can be elongated. And they say, oh, if we do that, they will have more power, and they will rule, they will become ruler, they will be more wise or more intelligent. But why they think that? They thought that because they saw the hybrid with long skull, and they say, hey, that's the way to go. But even if you deform the skull of the baby or a child, it won't change the DNA, it won't change the suture in the skull. But these one, the DNA is not the same. The suture in the skull are not the same as the one from human. So these are little gods that Psalm 82 was talking about, that Genesis 6 is talking about. So what the Bible call gods with little g, they are not God. They are spiritual being, spiritual entity that are more powerful than just human being. If you look in Jeremiah 10:11, thus shall ye says unto them, the gods, little g, that have not made the heaven and the earth, even they shall perish from the earth and from under these heavens. So you see, they shall perish, they shall die. So they were real. There's real gods. It's just they will die like men. So it's interesting to see all the Greek and Roman and Egyptian mythology. They always talk about like these gods, these half-gods, these giants, but they behave like men. So they're not like divine. They're just like spiritual entity. And probably these children, so the children's, the hybrid, the mighty, the Gibborim, the Nephilim, they were worshipping their fathers, which are the fallen angels, and they created a whole religion or old mythology that's revolved around that. There's just the history that were given by these fallen angels to these culture that was deformed over the years. These half-gods and ruler, but the reality is rooted in the fourth dimension. And today we have the modern version of all these mythology. It's what we call like the alien phenomenon or the extraterrestrial phenomenon. So I think that this is really a misunderstanding of the spiritual reality. So there's a spiritual reality, there's four-dimensional being, spiritual being, and they interact with our third dimension. And when there's interaction, we just see, oh, that's aliens, that's extraterrestrial. But actually it's extra-dimensional. There's a very interesting testimony that I heard, and I want to share. I will try to summarize his testimony. But a guy named is Joe Jordan. He's an American investigator that used to work for MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. And he was involved like for many years with them, tried to study the UFO phenomenon. And he was curious and he wanted to know more about that stuff. But it was always out of reach. Until he learned that there was a lot of people claimed to be abducted by aliens. So he said, hey, they have a close encounter with actually these beings, so let's hear what they have to say. So he compiled a lot of testimonies from people who were abducted by these entities. So here I just summarize a bit the claim of these entities. So the entities are teaching these abductees that, oh, we are your creators. We created DNA and we place you on this earth. And then they always say like, we will guide you to reach your next step of evolution. They also claim that Jesus, Moses, Buddha, Muhammad, they were all one of them. They also say that the earth is a living organism, like the goddess Gaia. That the earth will die if humanity doesn't change. So you see the ecologist movement to an extreme. And they claim that they are more advanced spiritually and technologically. And they came from another solar system or other galaxy. And they try to help us. So they vehiculate all these ideas through the New Age movement and the Aquarius conspiration, and that we will need these entities to bring us to a new level of evolution, to bring us enlightenment. And we have to united ourselves. All the religion has to be under one unified religion so we can achieve that illumination. Even if they say they want to help, most of the abductees, they say they feel the exact opposite. They feel the darkness. They are traumatized by these encounters. And in 1996, Joe Jordan, the guy who tried to compile all the data from the abductee, met Jesus and became Christian by reading Bible and everything. And at one point, someone was teaching about Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, which says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against power, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." You see, in high places, height, the fourth dimension. And then you realize, whoa, this is not from God. These entities are probably like demons, and this is not from God. And so we forsake everything about like investigation with MUFON and everything, and you just like cast everything aside. And 1 month later, God inspired him to look back at these documents because there's something that God wanted to show him. So he went to read the document again, like this testimony of so many abductees that he interviewed. So he found this document of a guy he interviewed like many years back, and this guy was describing his abduction by aliens. He was in his bed, and he started to levitate, and he saw lights all around him. He felt a terror, a presence, and as he levitated above his bed, he panicked and he says, Jesus, help me. And instantaneously, he came back to his bed. The light is gone, the presence is gone, and he fell back on his bed. And then he realized, like, whoa, I think that all the aliens thing, it's not aliens. It's probably like these beings from the heavenly places, the high places. So these are extra-dimensional beings, the fourth dimension being that are interacting with our third dimension. So he went to see MUFON, so his former colleague, and he says, "Hey, I think we found something that is really shedding a new light on all the alien phenomenon." And he talked about this guy who says Jesus, and that's the only way he could fight these aliens. And MUFON says, "Oh, we know, we already have a dozen cases." And then Joe Jordan replies like, "Hey, let's talk about that in the next convention." It's like, no, we want to, put a lid on that. We don't want to look ridiculous, so we'll just ignore these cases. And finally, he compiled like something like 400 cases when people says Jesus, and they were delivered. So, so there's a conspiracy, even in the UFO world, to discard this information that actually has nothing to do with alien from a distant galaxy, but it's just from an extra dimension, the fourth dimension. Just don't be afraid if you're scared of being abducted by aliens. Most of the people that were abducted, or all of them, they look for that. So they open doors. They are in the New Age movement. I don't think that those who says Jesus help me were really Christian. They probably like heard about Jesus, and that was their first experience with God. Because I think that when you belong to God, you're protected. You cannot be abducted by these extra-dimensional beings. Okay. It's interesting to see also the light phenomenon. So UFO mean unidentified flying object. Okay, I know there's many pranks, many hoax, many video we see or photos or just like made up. But there are many evidence of these light phenomenon. Even before Hollywood, even like 1,000 years ago during the medieval time, there's record of these kind of lights or engine, whatever it is. We see some picture here from the Renaissance. So you see there's these light phenomenon or object, flying object. So you see this is way before Hollywood, way before Steven Spielberg. So is these entities or devils or falling angels? Because you see that in Hebrew 1:13-14, they say that the angels are there to serve, not to abduct people. And recently the US government declassified about 11,000 documents about strange light phenomenon. Most of the time it's from a pilot, a fighter pilot. They saw a light object moving, and most of the time it doesn't respect the aerodynamic laws or the law of physics. It's really moving fast at right angle and go from one extremity to the other. So what are these light or these UFO or these phenomena? For me, I always look my answers in the Bible, because the Bible is a complete book. We can find is the Word of God. So anything that we have questioned, we can find answer there, even about UFOs. Let's look in Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 4. And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind. You see in lesson 14, we talk about the whirlwind. You see when there's spinning, like Elijah went in the fourth dimension in a whirlwind. So you see, each time there's a whirlwind is a portal opening to the fourth dimension. Came out of the north a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it, and out of the midst thereof, as the color of amber, out of the midst of the fire. So we see fire, so we see lights, we see a metallic thing. It's like the color of amber. If we continue to look at the description, then you talk about cherubim, a kind of angel class. Let's look at verse 13 to 22. He will describe these objects. As for the likeness of the living creature, their appearance was like burning coil of fire, and like the appearance of lamp. It went up and down among the living creature, and the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning. So we talk about the light phenomenon. And the living creature ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of a lightning. You see, that describe what most of the pilot, when they saw a UFO, is like it go from one extreme to the other. So the movement is really fast, and it seems to defy all laws of physics. Verse 15. Now as I beheld the living creature, behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures, with his four faces. The appearance of the wheels and the work was like unto the color of beryl, and they four had one likeness, and their appearance and their work was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. So you see that look exactly like the image that we saw like from the medieval time, a wheel inside a wheel, a kind of saucer. When they went upon their four sides, and they turned not when they went. As for their rings, they were so high that they were dreadful, and their ring were full of eyes round about them four. So you see, all eyes around, it's like little lights around. And when the living creatures went, the wheel went by them, and when the living creature were lift up from the earth, the wheels were lift up. Whithersoever the spirit was to go, they went. Thither was their spirit to go, and the wheels were lift up over against them. For the spirits of the living creature was in the wheels. When those went, these went, and when those stood, these stood, and when those were lift up from the earth, the wheels were lift up over against them. For the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels, and the likeness of the firmament upon the heads of the living creature was as the color of the terrible crystal, stretched forth over their heads above. So we see many things here. We see first that the wheels, or these kind of saucer or UFOs, they are controlled telepathically, because the spirits were in the wheel. So they thought the wheel, let's go there, and the wheel go there. So they were controlled by their spirit. So they were controlled telepathically. Second, their movement goes beyond the law of physics. We saw that in verse 14. And verse 22, it says they were under the firmament. So the firmament is the limit between the third and the fourth dimension. So we see that they were under. So they were manifested in our three-dimensional world. That's why we saw them, or Ezekiel saw them. So these wheels are just a way for the angels or the cherubim to be transported. So God gave them wheels. So give them transportation way. Let's look in 2 Kings 6, verse 17. The context, since you have Elisha with his servant, and they have like a huge army in front of them, and the servant is trembling. And Elisha says, hey, don't worry, because those who are with us are in greater number than those who are against us. And then he prayed God to open his servant's eyes. And let's look in verse 17. And Elisha prayed, and says, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes, that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariot of fire round about Elisha. So you see, they have horses and chariot. So in the fourth dimension, they need transportation. That's why there's horses. That was their chariot. Chariot is the kind of UFO flying saucer. There's wheels. There's the angels. Some have wings. Why? Because the fourth dimension, the spiritual world, is not just like in our thought or something that is not really there. It's a true dimension, a true realm, a true world when we need to transport or we need to displace ourselves. So that's why there's wings, so they can move around. So they're not limited to the same law of physics as we are, but they need to move around. Look at Daniel 10:12. Then says he unto me, Fear not, Daniel, for so that's an angel who's talking. For from the first day that thou didst set thine heart to understand, and to chasten thyself before my God, thy word were heard, and I am come for thy words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief prince, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. So you see, it talked about like a spiritual battle that when Daniel prayed, they got God as an answer for him and gave to these angels. But he had to fight 21 days to make his way there. So there's real battle in the fourth dimension. In the spiritual world, it's a real world where there's battle. So each time we pray, it has a direct impact on this spiritual world. Each time we pray, there's an activity in the spiritual realm. Just to finish, I want to open another parenthesis. In the 1980s, when we got the technology about cameras and photograph, we saw this new phenomenon that was discovered. They call that the rods. There's some image there. And it's a kind of electromagnetic signature or print of these phenomenon, and most of them have 6 wings, so 3 pairs. And these phenomenon are really, really fast. There's only 1 or 2 image per millisecond or something. It go like thousands of miles per hour, and there's only like really good camera that can photograph them. And now, 20 years later, we have like more and more technology, more precise. We can see like a lot of these phenomenon all over the place. And most of them have 6 wings, so 3 pairs. And they ask biologists, they ask all these experts, and they say there's nothing in nature that has 3 pairs of wings. Even insect or birds, there's nothing. It's always 4 or so. There's no 6 pairs or 6 wings. But we know better because we see that in Isaiah 6 verse 2 that there's seraphim. They have 3 pairs of wings. 2 to cover their eyes, 2 to cover their feet, and 2 to fly. So you see, these phenomenon, could it be just the fourth dimension reality that has a 3D overprint? We see a flash of these seraphim flying around. So in some area there's a lot, a photograph of these creatures or these phenomenon. So we see now in Ephesians chapter 6 verse 12 that there is really battle or fighting or wrestle in the heavenly the high places. So this is a reality, and sometimes we have like glimpse, or they have an impact on our third dimension world. A little bit like the third dimension can have an impact on the second dimension or the 2 dimension. If I put my finger on the surface of the table, I have a footprint. I have a 2-dimensional footprint on that. It's the same thing. The spiritual world have a footprint in our 3 dimension. So all these phenomenon can always be explained. So we're going to stop here for now, and we're going to continue in part 16 about Genesis 6 and how this will help us to understand